Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Lisa McDonald from Integrated Connections, a healthcare staffing firm that specializes exclusively in integrative and functional medicine career placements. As the concept of personalized medicine continues to take hold, medical practices are increasingly looking for a stable of health and wellness practitioners, licensed and unlicensed, including health coaches, to help deliver a customized, patient-centered healthcare approach. So this episode will be of particular interest to any health coaches hoping to work in a functional medicine setting. In this conversation, we talk a lot about this personalized, whole-person approach to functional medicine. We talk a lot about building and growing a business. We talk about the emergence of telehealth and how this growing style of practice may open more doors for health coaches and for patients looking to get the specific care they need. Lisa also shares some wisdom for coaches looking to branch out into the functional and integrative medicine space and how to work on pitching your services to a practice. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous Health Coach Radio episodes can always be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Without further delay, let's drop into today's chat with the founder of Integrated Connections, Lisa McDonald. All right, welcome to the show, Lisa McDonald. It's awesome to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
All right, we're going to learn a lot from you, a veteran in the health and wellness field, an entrepreneur who's tried a few things and learned a lot of lessons. But why don't we start with sharing with our audience who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Integrated Connections, and it's a career platform with the intent to help patient-centered personalized medicine grow. So we recruit in the field, integrative lifestyle functional medicine. We also do consulting services, and then we just launched some e-courses that can support candidates who are looking for a job in the field, and then employers who are trying to grow their practice. My intent with the company was really just to support the growth of a better way of medicine. And we can talk about that, but I keep moving, I'm flexible. I'm like that river, and I'm kind of figuring out as I go, like a lot of us are. So if you want a little more background on that, as far as how I got started, like so many of us in this field, it was through my own health. So 15 years ago, I was very, very sick, and conventional medicine pretty much failed me. They gave me a diagnosis where they thought I had lupus, but they're like, we're going to send you to a rheumatologist and we'll get your blood screened. And that was the first kind of aha moment for me, because I'm like, wow, why would you plant that seed in someone's head if you don't know for sure? Because I really believe in the power of the mind, even back then, before I really got so deep into all of this. And they did the blood work, and there was so much inflammation, but it wasn't lupus. And then the conventional physician said, you know what? I've seen a patient like you before. It didn't present immediately, but then 5 years later, she woke up one day and boom, she was, in the hospital. So I thought, oh my gosh, wow, right? Because we regard physicians as like these people who have so much authority, and we believe everything they say. And so just, that inner knowing in me is like, that's not right. And I went on my own journey, and it started with a naturopathic physician who actually said, oh yeah, no, you've got to peel back the layers here, and started addressing a lot of my issues. And one of the first things was gluten. And it was, that was one of the things that came out. I had a tremendously stressful life, and I also had been on antibiotics the first 18 years of my life. So, you can see today, right, you easily figure out there was a lot of issues and why. And so as I started getting better, I realized how long I hadn't felt well and how important health is. And then I kept thinking, oh my gosh, how many people are walking around sick right now? I wonder how much of our world is so sick. And it it consumed me. I'm like, I got to do something. I can't, so I had a background in HR management for 12 years. And I decided I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to support this field. We've got to have better medicine. This is not going to work. And I launched Integrated Connections in 2009. And, it was probably the craziest time for anyone to start a business. I was 40s and getting divorced and 2 kids. And, my family and people around me thought I was crazy. And it really was. It was a crazy thing for me to do. But there was something so deep inside of me that had to do this. And I knew that I would never be at peace if I didn't pursue. And, I just wanted to be a part of it. I wasn't in a position to go back and be in medical school. So this is how I thought I could use my HR background. I'll start recruiting in this field. And it was like my hobby. I mean, I study, that's what I read. Even books I read now, it's all about health and wellness. It's all about root cause, whole person, mind, body, spirit, everything. It's just, I'm very passionate about it. And so I could take that knowledge when I'm screening candidates, and it's really valuable. And I think it helped me position myself better with my clients when they could see, oh, she actually does know this field. Because I'm a patient too. I've been seeing integrative and functional medicine doctors for 15 years. And when there's something emerging and there's new tests and I want to know about it, I'm trying it. You should see my group of integrative practitioners. I mean, I've got a whole team of, people that I go to because, I slide back once in a while. And every time I do, I'm getting tired, I'm overworked. It's that kind of wake up call about, okay, who on your team do you need to go see and fill back up? And that's why I think I value health coaches so much. We need someone who's checking in and holding us accountable, because someone like me, who is so passionate about this, dedicated my life to it. I can't even tell you the sacrifices I've made for this business. I still need someone to hold me accountable and check in and say, whoa, you know what? How many hours are you working? And did you skip a couple meals? And what have you done for yourself? And, just for me, sometimes I just have to walk outside and ground, like, when did you, I can go on and on and on, but I think that, I just really love like the work that you're doing to educate people to do this work, because everybody needs to be that support. We all need someone on the outside who can look at us and check in. And I think that medicine needs health coaches. Even in the field that I work in, doctors can sometimes have an hour visit, that first visit. Typically, they do. But even in that hour, it is not enough time for a physician or a provider to be educating that patient. They need someone to support that patient along. And they need someone because depending on the chronic illness that they're presenting with or whatever it is, some of them can be so complex. And as a patient, I can say it can be overwhelming, right? And it's so much better to have someone on that journey, guiding us, checking in, supporting us. And yeah, so when I start talking, you can see I get a little more excited. So sorry,
No, there's just so much about your story that I know resonates with me, and because Erin has a similar story, resonates with her. And as the admissions director for our course, I know I hear stories like yours all the time, and people are always like, what, am I crazy to want to do this? Who am I? I'm not a doctor. I'm a whatever. And what I love about what you said too is you just felt this drive and this calling and this passion to do something to help others. And I heard, I couldn't go back to medical school. That wasn't an option, which is an option for many people that go this road, right? Like that's just not a choice. So what else can I do? And I love how you just was like, leveraged your past experience, leveraged what you knew well and what your strengths are, and launched an entire business in your 40s, divorced with kids. I was in the same boat,
Oh.
Actually, I was in my 40s when I finally sort of started to pursue health coaching. I took my first course. I was a single mom, 2 kids. I eventually got remarried, and it was that remarriage that finally gave me the confidence to make a leap,
Yeah.
But there's just so much about what you just shared that I know we're going to have thousands of people listening saying, yep, sounds a lot like me, and little pieces of the puzzle. And the entrepreneurial side of this is the biggest source of insecurity, I think, for many people going this road, because so many people are leaving another job. Maybe they've only ever worked for somebody else their entire lives. And the idea of starting something from scratch is scary as hell.
Yeah.
So I would love, if you wouldn't mind, sharing a little bit about what that experience was like for you and how you handled that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also share my mistakes, because I made a heck of a lot of those. And that, I think, is, I always think about if I can help somebody else on their journey from my mistakes, and there was more worth in it, right? Because, starting out, I did it with blind love. I just had to. I'm glad I listened to that, because we all have that inner knowing that we listen to, right? But some of the things I didn't do was getting enough support along the way. And because I bootstrapped it and I was a single mom, I was very hesitant to ever spend a dime, right? And so I went from this HR person, and the jobs I had were in large corporations where I had a tech person, we had a recruiter recruiting for, you know what I mean? I had an assistant, and then I went to being everything. So the first thing was having to learn every bit of the business. I was the marketing person, the accountant, I'm, the tech. I didn't know tech. Are you kidding me? And then had to learn WordPress and had no idea how overwhelming that all was going to be. And, granted, I did have a lot going on with trying to raise 2 kids, and they were little, and I should have gotten support. I should have had invested more of money into someone who I could talk to guide me a little bit. That's why I think when people invest in your program, that is so smart, because you have to put the investment in to gain back. And, if I had had a health coach along the way helping me take better care of myself, I wonder if I would be further along. I ask those questions a lot. If I had taken more time to have a consultant start with me in the beginning, I didn't do market research, which was probably a good thing I didn't, because I didn't know how. I always talk about 5 years of being in the trenches, and it really was being in the trenches. And I maybe, should have done a little more research there, but I don't know, in retrospect, maybe that is just the journey that was meant for me. And, I'm that much more rich for learning from that. I guess it's all perspective, but I think that would be the first thing, was wearing every hat as a business owner and having to learn it. And I'll tell you what's happened through COVID, because at first, I support a lot of small healthcare practices, and they had a big hit initially. And so that was a hit for me. And so I had to scale back in a lot of areas. And it actually was a good experience, because I had to go in and get like kind of on the ground level of everything that was happening in marketing and where the money was going, et cetera. And there was some cleaning up that needed to be done. So I think if you are starting your own business, you really do have to know what's happening in every aspect, and you need to check in on it regularly. Because I've always been about, don't micromanage, don't, if you really, you've got to empower people who are working with you. I'm a big fan of that, but wow. 10 years later, I got back on the ground level and saw, where is this money going? And what is my return on this? And it was, they talk about COVID's revealing a lot. It revealed a lot about how my business was actually running, and I needed to clean it up. So.
Well, I want to just jump in, because I love that you shared that as one of your sort of learnings as a bootstrap, entrepreneur. So just anybody who's out there listening that isn't the aspiring health coach, or, in the early stages of practice, Laura and I are just nodding our heads like, yeah, we had to learn how to do all that stuff too. You kind of have to learn how to do that stuff. And there is value in learning how to do it. There's a lot of value in understanding the basic, workings of your website, the basic workings of your merchant system and your email system. And, starting out and just kind of getting into it, getting your hands dirty, eventually being able to maybe hire somebody, a virtual assistant, to help you with the parts you're not good at, but just being able to know the inner workings of your business. There's a great deal of power in that. And I think it's just when you're getting started, folks, you can learn it. It's learnable, right? I mean, Lisa, you learned it.
Yeah.
It's learnable.
Absolutely. It's actually kind of fun. And when it's your own business, you have a vested interest in it. I don't know. I enjoy learning a lot. I feel like if you aren't learning, you're kind of, if you're not growing, you're dying. Right. And so, and I really believe in that Kaizen of continuous improvement. And so for me, every time I learn something new, I'm really proud of myself. Okay. I'm growing, because this isn't, this is a journey. There's no, I used to think about, once I get here, I'm done. Once I'm there, I'm good. No, that you're never done. You are never done. It is a continuous journey and learning along the way. So for me, I need more joy and fun. That's the thing I always have to bring back in my life, because I'm a bit of a workaholic. And so I'm like, okay, let's make this fun. And I brag to my kids, because they make fun of me, but I'll be like, hello, I just learned how to do an e-course platform. And, it's because they think that I can't even manage my iPhone. I'm like, oh yeah, watch this. So
watch me. Yeah. And I think one thing one thing also that I think is worth mentioning for the sort of further along health coach that I thought was interesting you brought up, and this really landed for me, is that when sort of COVID hit and things got a little weird and you had a bit of time perhaps to kind of go back now into the systems you put into place and see where there was some gaps or maybe some opportunities to automate. That's interesting as well, because when we get started, this is how I got started, and maybe you can relate to this, Lisa, maybe anybody listening can. I just started piecemealing it together. Here's my email platform, here's my online learning platform, here's my web platform, here's my payment platform. And none of it really spoke to each other. I was just kind of picking utilities out of thin air that seemed good. And then as your business progresses, and when you finally have the time to sit back and look at everything you've put together, you can see opportunities to streamline, to automate, to make your business sort of flow a bit better. So there's, I just think it's sort of in this sense of like an encouragement to new coaches that you're not going to knock it out of the park right away, but you'll have an opportunity to come back later and clean it up. But don't let any of that prevent you from starting.
Right.
That's such great advice. Absolutely. 100% agree with all of that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that sit on the sidelines waiting for things to be perfect, right? They just way overthink it. And I'm kind of like, the first step, that's all you need to focus on is the first step. Stop thinking about 85 steps ahead of yourself, because if you don't take the first step, you're never going to get there. So what do you have to have in place now to take your first step? Maybe that's enrolling in a course. Right? Maybe you need to find out if you can afford it and if you have time and all that other stuff. Now that you've graduated and you have your credential, what's your second step? What's your third step? And this is one of the things in our program, we try to step by step this for folks, and more programs coming on the market are doing a better job as far as speaking to the business side of this. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about marketing. It's got to be about the foundations of the business. I don't know how many times we've had people be like, what do you think about this business name? And I'm like, well, what does that have to do with who you are as a coach, who it is you serve, what problem they solve, or what problem they have and how you solve it? Like, you can't build a website until you're familiar with all these things. And sometimes you're not sure what that is until you just get out and start coaching people. So to a certain degree, you can't overthink it, but at the same time, leverage the knowledge and the experience of people that came before you. People like you, right? People like Erin and I are folks that have been out doing this for a number of years, that have learned things the hard way, a little bit of tidbit of advice where we want to kind of help sort of pave the way for people. But the last thing you want to do is to sit on your passion because you don't have everything in place, mm-hmm. right? Listen to what Lisa just said about like, ask for help. That's completely fine. And I 100% agree with you. And here's the thing. I think some people are a little afraid to seek help, either because financially they're afraid of making the investment in the help mm-hmm. to make their life easier, right? Or B, they're afraid it somehow makes them look less capable or knowledgeable mm-hmm. if they don't do it themselves. There's a little bit of psychology there,
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, I was kind of more like Erin. Like, I kind of feel like I need to learn all this myself. And then for me, the one thing where I finally was like, help, was my website. It was so bad. It was so bad. Mm-hmm. And I had just started out with a blog. I didn't really have a business then. And my blog, so I had a friend of mine who actually, interestingly enough, and people may find this to be true, people that started, because I was just putting myself out there and there was a lot of passion in what I wrote. I had a couple of friends that were reading what I wrote that are like, you know what, I think I can help. I had one friend who kind of put together this cute little cartoon graphic for me and put together some other graphics, and another friend of mine who offered to actually help me with the website and just make it look better. So I 100% agree with you as far as like, find the support you need to take that next step that you feel is necessary, and then just move forward.
I think that is so important, because one of the things I felt alone a lot, and I think because of the position I was in, raising the kids alone and things like that, I always felt like, it's just me. Mm-hmm. I got to figure this out. It's just me. It's just me. And that's so wrong. We need community. We need support. And I think even if, the people are helping you build a business, but I think you need to connect with people who are also in the same boat as entrepreneurs starting out. Mm-hmm. Because you can share lessons, you can commiserate, you can build each other up. And there's so many mistakes I made along the way. And nobody understood what I did. 10 years ago, they're like, what? Integrative medicine, holistic, what? Mm-hmm. And so I was so alone, and when I started going to conferences, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so happy to meet my people, and they were in this too. And we all, because when you're kind of breaking those boundaries in healthcare, it's hard. It's really hard. And you join with others who are in that, and wow, I'd come back and I'd be filled up. I'm ready to go. I'm powered up. I can do this. And I think seeking support, emotionally, mentally, and business, all of it is really, really important. And I think something else that you touched on, For one of the things and this is going to be interesting because I feel like the world needs more people who do business from a heart-centered way. And so I don't want to like contradict myself, because that was all I did when I started this. I was just filled with a passion in my heart to help people. And everything I did was, how can I serve this field? What can I do? And I forgot about making money for a while, you know? And there's such a balance there. And I mean, we're putting things in place now because I always want to help. And when I get someone on the phone and I can see, oh, I can help them, I get going. And all of a sudden an hour is gone. And, you know, so it's still me balancing. I can still help from my heart and grow this and do good and make money and provide value. And that's the other thing that, I don't know. One of the things I consistently am working, 10 years later, I'm still doing that. And I think if someone did a personality test, they'd probably identify something in me that I'm of that nature. But it is, okay, wait, I have a lot of value too. I've been doing this a long time and my time is valuable. And that doesn't mean I'm still not helping and I still can't be of service, because that's, you know, one of the changes I've made in my business was we have this job board where you can go to look for a job, and then I do recruitment, and the job board is of service. Like, you know, it's not how I keep my doors open. And I tell people that all the time. It is how I felt like I can continue to serve this field of medicine, but it's recruitment. It's how I keep my doors open. So that is the other thing too, is gosh, we need people who care, right? We need people who care so bad right now in this world, but we also need to make sure we take care of ourselves and value what we have to give. That's,
I think that phrase, provide value, is so valuable because it sort of is in that space between, I want to help people, I want to make money, I need to make money. And then providing value is the thing that bridges that, right? When you think about it, I always think about this, I'm a consumer of goods. We're all consumers. We all buy things. We all spend our money on things. I'm happy to spend my money on things that deliver value.
Yep.
So when a health coach or a heart-centered entrepreneur gets into business, like, I just want to help people, and they go broke doing it. Or on the flip side, I'm not going to get into health coaching, even though I really want to, because I need to make money. It's like, just step back and understand what value you provide. You know, this goes back to what we teach in our course, which is the unique value proposition. Laura talked about it earlier. How do you help people? What problem do you solve for people? And you know, as a consumer, if somebody solved my problem, I always use this example of my sore neck that I had a long time ago. I had this very sore neck, and I went to every medical practitioner you could think of: doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, everybody, physiotherapists. Eventually, I paid somebody out of the trunk of her car, craniosacral therapist who fixed it. She fixed my neck, and I was willing to open my wallet to anybody who could fix my neck. Yep. She provided the value. She did it. She wasn't a licensed health practitioner, whatever. It worked. So, the long and the short of it is, I think that phrase, provide value, when you're going to business doing anything, but especially in a heart-centered realm, just really think about it from that perspective. I'm not taking money from people, but I need to earn money. And in return, I'm giving them this. And I get to help, and I get to be in this sort of heart-centered space that I want to be in. So thank you for dropping that little sound nugget. I just think it's pretty valuable. Ha!
Yeah.
There it is again. You know, and I love this focus on, and I'm starting to see it more, and I think we're going to continue to see the demand for practitioners that have a patient-centered practice. In that, the cost of healthcare continues to rise, and the cost of insurance continues to rise, yet the out-of-pocket expenses are also rising. So I think we're going to see more consumers of care demanding a practitioner that does more than just spend 7 minutes with you and throw an antibiotic at you. I had the exact same experience you had, where I was on antibiotics for a number of years because my immune system just sucked because I was eating foods that I shouldn't be eating. Okay, so we can totally relate there. But it was that doctor that spent an hour with me that was like, I'm suspicious of this. And, anyway, long story short, similar to Erin, insurance didn't cover any of that for me, but I was happily spending what I could afford to work with that particular practitioner because it made me well, even though I was still paying the outrageous premiums for my health insurance, and I think we're going to continue to see this continued demand and patients moving that way. And interestingly, my husband and I belong to SteadyMD. because we don't have a local doctor around here. But both of us, the experience we've had with our doctors, we have the exact same doctor every time. They know exactly who we are, very patient-centered in everything they do. Their knee-jerk reaction, even though they're MDs, is not necessarily medication. And we're seeing more and more entities like this pop up. And so what I would like, so speaking from the standpoint of like recruitment and what you do, what type of practitioners are you working with? Are you seeing platforms like this, more and more practitioners wanting to go more towards sort of telehealth, smaller patient roster, but more high touch? Is this a trend that you're seeing, or is this a trend that you're trying to foster?
Well, I think I've been trying to foster it forever, but it's happening. And I can tell you, so when COVID first happened, there was the dip, right? We were all trying to figure it out, and the practices couldn't open, and then they pivoted to telemedicine, et cetera, and now we're seeing it's doing this. So I just wrote a newsletter I send out, and I said, okay, I always share how many jobs are on the job board, because I call it the pulse of the field, because it really shows the growth, right? Patient demand is requiring this, and it's happening. And all of a sudden, we're in some really difficult economic times, but yet patients are demanding this, and we are now hiring more people in these practices. So the hiring is going up, and it's not just patients who are the chronically ill, but now people are more aware of how important it is to be healthy in case you get COVID. So they're more interested in the preventive. So it's all coming together. It's almost like that perfect storm, but it's really, everybody's seeing, okay, wait, my health really does matter, because look what happens if I am obese and I get COVID. So it's driving personalized medicine way up. This is a great time to be a health coach, I think. I feel like I've been waiting for so long to see it grow, and every year I see growth, but this, I think, is really going to impact the field. And I am seeing, so I get a lot of organizations that call me who want to emerge in it, because they're like, okay, so can you tell us about this? And if we're recruiting and et cetera, I'm getting a lot of those calls. So, it is on the radar. People see that this is a solution. People see healthcare is broken. And I think that that whole piece about education, it's like, oh yeah, people, well, and then even employers, right? The self-insured employers totally get it. They know that if they do invest in the health of their employees, it's not just better insurance, et cetera, all that, but it's better productivity, it's better retention rates. It's just, there's so many value pieces across the board in it. And I think this is really making us all wake up to that. So yeah, absolutely, it's growing.
Oh, I'm very excited to hear from you, somebody who's kind of in the trenches, that the medical system is aware of the sort of metabolic risk factors that make COVID a lot worse, because I felt like that was happening in our echo chambers, but I didn't feel like it was a conventionally understood or appreciated or shared viewpoint. So that's exciting to hear. I actually think, I'd love to know what you think. Now, please understand that my opinions here are coming from the fact that I live in a country that has universal health care. But to me, the healthcare system has always been like a giant barge, right? Trying to get anything to happen is like turning a barge. It's just slow. It's not, I feel like that the move to telemedicine is pretty fascinating, actually, because there's a nimbleness to that, right? Like you can get into a session with your doctor maybe more quickly, maybe get more things happening. Then if we have this sort of functional medicine integrative approach, it's sort of easier to kind of then pass you off to the nurse practitioner or to the health coach or to the whatever. So have you found that, like, when things open back up again, presuming they do you think maybe telemedicine might become the new normal? Or do you think there's benefits to it? What are the pros and cons of telemedicine versus the in-person clinical sort of experience in your opinion?
I think it's accessibility. I think it helped a lot with licensing, loosening it up across state lines. I work with some clients where that first visit, they'll want to come in and they do spend an hour and a half. They might even get their labs there. And then after they've made that connection with them and they told their story and they are now on a treatment plan, they're like, I really don't need to come in. I mean, we're so busy that it can save you an hour if you can go ahead and just pop on your computer and have a visual conversation with them. I think that telemedicine, I personally, I feel like it's here to stay. I feel like, what's interesting too, because, if I ever wanted to do an interview over video, the candidate sometimes would struggle with that. And I would do it, especially if I'm interviewing for a job that required telemedicine. And now everybody's on board. We all know how to Zoom. We all know how to do a video. So again, it kind of forced us to change, right? Because it's a necessary change to happen. And I think people are enjoying that. I don't have this commute anymore. I think we identified our lives are a little bit more calm when we're not in a car rushing. So I think it's going to help medicine a lot. And I had a really long conversation yesterday with a client about the connection, making that connection with an individual. Can you do that over the video? And I believe in it. I feel like as I'm looking at you guys, I feel like I know you already. And maybe it's because I have been working virtually so long. So this is normal for me, but I can make that connection over the video right now. And when I interview candidates, I watch for that. Are they engaging? Are they looking at me in the eye? Are they, they're not, there's so much that you can do just to be yourself. And so it's going to make it easier for all of us to get better care if we kind of adapt this virtual approach.
What I like about that, though, just to jump in, is that a lot of health coaches have been working virtually forever. Like forever, I've had a virtual practice, and it's almost like now it's legitimized. Like, oh, I talked to my doctor on the Zoom. I talked to my specialist on the Zoom, and I talked to my health coach on the old Zoom. And it's like, oh, and to your point, consumers have more literacy to video conferencing now. So it's like, we've been doing it for a long time. And we've had, what's interesting is one of my jobs is I'm teaching this advanced coaching course. And in teaching this course, I get to evaluate coaches. They submit coaching sessions to me, and I evaluate how the coaching session went. And it strikes me every time I listen to or watch one of these sessions, these video conferencing sessions, there's a relationship here. There is no doubt in my mind, the relationship between the coach and the client is 1,000,000% real. They've been on the phone together every week for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. It's palpable. The relationship is palpable. And health coaches, we're pioneers. We've been doing this for a long time. So suddenly the whole sort of medical and health sphere is kind of coming on to where we've been playing anyway. Right?
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Yeah, what's interesting. So just to kind of tag back to this, the benefit of this concept of telemedicine or platform, like this study. So Brad had to, I started it because they came to us as an organization and said, hey, do you have someone who'd be willing to try this service and let you know what you think? And it was almost like a dating app. Like they asked questions about me and my lifestyle and my habits and my hobbies. And they paired me with a guy who's a CrossFitter, who's certain age, so this is a guy that understood my lifestyle. And we did the same thing for Brad just recently. And this is someone who has struggled with addiction, struggled with anxiety and depression. Guess the doctor he was paired with, someone who has also struggled with like all the things that he struggled with. So this is somebody who, and the guy's in California. So he can see a doctor in California who knows exactly what he's struggling with and is like, you know what, this medication is, I don't think you need the ADHD medication. I think if you stick with this medication for the anxiety and we continue with the diet, you're going to find you're able to focus and all these other things. Talk to him about meditation, all this stuff. So this is, to your point about kind of removing the barriers of state lines. Is
amazing.
It is.
Amazing. The doctor that's right for you might not be at your local clinic.
Oh,
right.
Yes.
You're exactly right. And so I want to tag something that you were talking about as far as the doctors or the practitioners that you're recruiting. So another side note, like the doctors we used to go see, their practice was bought out by some huge conglomerate. I went in there one day with my daughter. I'm like, I immediately hated the place. There was way too many people in there. You had to stand in line and then you had to go up and it was 7 minutes. And all of the doctors, every single one of the doctors that used to be at that practice before they sold are no longer there. They have all left and gone someplace else. And now they're all replaced with people that have started practicing medicine like in like 2018. Like these are brand new doctors that are just a couple years old that are joining these like hamster wheel, like doctor mills. And so I'm wondering, as far as the people that you're recruiting, are you getting newbies, or are these more people that have been practicing for a while that have seen the problems with practicing medicine that way and are looking to kind of do something else? Can you talk a little bit about
who you're placing, what you're seeing? It's a mix, but I would say, especially when I was first getting into this, and, I would have a provider calling me in their car on the way home saying, I just saw 38 patients. I can't do this anymore. I don't know that
Oh my
I was able to
gosh.
help one of them, right? I can't do this anymore. And so there are so many who are in that, that treadmill of it's just, a pill for an ill or the Band-Aid approach. Like, this is not what I went into medicine for. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's a lot of them who had health issues of their own or someone in their family member, and the system didn't help them, and they had to go outside of the system to get help. And they're like, oh, wow, okay,
Yeah.
and then they immediately start getting an education in the field. And now I'm starting to see, some of the people, like a lot of the RNs, and that they're coming out and they're like, oh, I came into this to do a holistic. And they immediately, after they're getting the education, going, they missed a whole piece here I need to go get this on my own now, because they didn't teach me a lot about nutrition. They didn't teach me a lot about, so I'm sure you guys know everything that they don't teach in those schools, but so it is a mix. It's a mix of all of it. But I think, the days, anybody who's, running their own business, or sometimes you're just absolutely depleted and, you're questioning. And I always have something happen that I'm like, oh, a call with someone like that. Like, oh my gosh, I just finished this, and this is why I went into medicine. I'm so excited. Or a placement where somebody is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to wake up and love what I do every day. And that's just like, okay, I'm on the right track, right? I always get a validation every week. Don't give up, keep going. You're on, this is it. So I think it's a mix of it, but I've also experienced where I was recruiting for a position that was an integrative, like, pain management opportunity. And I wasn't finding anybody in the field of pain management who had the education or experience. And so I started to go outside of it and just like conventional. And wow, the pushback I was getting from people it was kind of my wake up, because I'm so, everybody I surround myself kind of is in this field, right? Everybody in my database, everybody who's signing up there, there's an interest in it. They, believe in some of it. And so I stepped out of it and I went into approaching physicians about it. And they're like, oh no, that I know about integrative. It doesn't, da, 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 da. And so then I find myself preaching on the phone to them about, well, wait a minute, there's some research here, some studies to back it. And so, we're not there, right? There's still work to be done for sure. I hope that answered that question. Sometimes
It does.
Keep going.
No. Yeah, I mean, I feel for doctors. I want to put that out there. Like the example, the doctor that, kind of exasperatedly said, I saw 38 patients today. I don't necessarily know that I helped any one of them. It's just a little too easy sometimes for us to gripe about the medical system. But at the end of the day, those folks are heart-centered practitioners too. And they're getting a raw deal as well. So I really love, that's what I love about the integrative approach, is the doctor gets to do doctor stuff, and the stuff that can be passed off elsewhere can go to a health coach, to a nurse practitioner. And it's interesting that the unlicensed, it's interesting, but not surprising that these unlicensed sort of woo-woo practitioners are not yet being recognized. And who knows if they ever will, right? Like the craniosacral lady that, wiggled my head around the backseat of her car, fixed my neck. But, I think that what you're doing is really awesome. I think you're so far ahead of the curve too. Like, you were doing it long before anybody was thinking about it. So just acknowledgement to you for recognizing this need in the marketplace.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So I think, one thing I noticed too is when the people realize I need to practice differently, this isn't what I, signed up for, that they'll come to me and they say, okay, where do I get started? We get a lot of that. And that's one of the reasons I'm creating these e-courses, is so they can go there and explore. But I don't ever say, this is the one program for you. You have to find what resonates with you. So that's why I think it's awesome that you've got the program you have, because what if, so I like to give them, like a little portfolio. Here, go search, and then spend some time on each website and see what resonates best with you. And so for maybe, the RN who's going to get a health coaching certification, that's what she needed. And maybe, and I have to tell you, from a recruiter, if I see a CV from somebody who has completed a program as a health coach, that sets them apart. So any piece of education anybody is getting to show and prove, and this, I mean, if you watch any of my videos, I say over and over about initiative. So if I have a client who's open to somebody who may not have a lot of education yet, but they have demonstrated initiative, that they are passionate about practicing this way, a patient-centered approach and all that goes a long way. So that is why, like, if I see somebody that did complete that program, I'm like, oh, okay, then they're going to get more of my time in inspecting their CV as opposed
Mhm.
to someone who didn't show the initiative to pursue education in the field. So that is like, and I think that's one of the things that, so many things I read so much, I work so much and do that. And every once in a while I'm like, oh, is that time wasted? Nothing is ever wasted. I truly believe that. And so if you ever worry about the investment, no, it's not a waste. It's going to set you apart. It's going to bring value. It's going to, and even if they start their own business, I'm not going to go work with someone who didn't complete a program. Right. And because they won't give me that value back.
Yeah. So I have a question related to that. So we're getting, again, one of the few things that has been a positive out of COVID is the number of existing licensed practitioners that are seeking a health coaching certificate. A lot of nurses, more and more physicians, nurses is a big one, a big one. We get a lot of requests, and we are now a school that's approved for the national board exam. And we're finding that we're getting a lot of interest, particularly from the clinical space, folks that work in that realm that want to make sure what program they're. So my question for you is, when you're placing someone, and as far as employers looking to hire someone, what percentage is looking for just someone who's got a lot of experience, they can interview, versus I won't even look at someone unless they have not only a certificate, but the national board certification? Does that show up for you at all?
Yeah. And it's such a gray area, and we're still emerging. And so first of all, every client will say, I want someone with this education, right? They might have something that they said, and then I'm kind of educating them like, well, let's look at your area. Let's look at the demographics. Let's see how many actually have that certification.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always do a piece about your hiring character, but you can train skill. So, right. You can't train or teach personality or emotional intelligence or character. So let's hire for that and make sure that they have the initiative to pursue this, right? That they have that passion, the dedication, that they get it. And so I'm always asking questions, well, what are you doing? What kind of self-study? And I listen for things that they're reading, podcasts they're listening to. I'm always digging for showing that they're going to get it, and that is why I think a recruiter can be really helpful. If they're just getting CV after CV and you don't have it, they're just going to next. Because they talk about 6 to 9 seconds you have to grab attention, and it's really true, right? If you have 100 people, you're just next. You got a recruiter in there who's your advocate, and they're going in there like, whoa, wait, they want to, they don't have CME where they're at, they don't have the funds to do it or something, but this is what they are doing. But again, it's I can completely understand why people are pursuing more of the health coach certification, though, that are already clinicians or they're already a provider of some sort, because this field of medicine, you absolutely have to know how to educate and motivate, right? Yes. Because you get some really sick people coming in. I just interviewed one provider who said, I'm like asking for one of her success stories about a medical detective, et cetera. And she's like, this patient had been to 22 doctors and nobody could help them. And so you get somebody like in that's been through all of that, and they're so sick and they're depleted and tired. You've got to have a skill set to reach them. And they, I can see how valuable that is for the people why they're pursuing that now. And, we're seeing some people who are the long haulers after COVID. So we might be seeing a lot more of this chronic illness, the chronic fatigue symptoms. And how do you reach them when they come in? And so important, like give them hope, and how are you going to motivate them? And that makes sense to
me. Coaching, right? I think sometimes maybe we forget about that part. Like in a health coaching school, you'll learn about nutrition, you learn about fitness, but depending on whatever the sort of the paradigm that school teaches, but also you learn how to be a coach. And that's maybe where the nurses and the nurse practitioners are like, I know a lot about health, but I don't really know how to reach people and how to encourage them to change it. And some of the stuff that health coaches do is so granular. Like sometimes I get off the phone with my client and we've agreed to the goal we've set for the upcoming week is so granular that it almost doesn't seem like anything, but we are baby stepping down the path, right? And that's the piece of coaching that maybe isn't learned, definitely isn't learned in like a medical training, program. But what's interesting is we kind of talked earlier about, and I think maybe what this is what I interpreted from Laura's question too, is we see job postings. Okay, so we see job postings for health coaches. We're keeping our fingers on the pulse of these job postings that I don't think are coming from recruiters or folks like you, but they're coming directly from clinical organizations, and they're always asking for a registered dietitian, a licensed, nurse. And we tell our coaches, well, just apply anyway. Like, just put an application in anyway. You've got 10 clients under your belt. To your point, Lisa, you've got all this education in the art and science of coaching. I actually think we should be able to put our podcast library and our book library on our CV. We should be doing that just to show, again, that initiative. And so this whole board certification thing that we're going, this path we're down now, because now to Laura's point, we're qualified, our students, our graduates are qualified to sit this board exam, become a board certified health coach. Doesn't mean they're licensed, just to clear that up. You're not licensed, okay, you're just a board certified health coach. There's something about this like next level credential. I think doctors and folks running clinics think that's what they need, but really what they need is somebody who's a masterful coach.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, one of those things about, even if they want to go work for someone, there's still that piece of becoming, you're always a salesperson, right? And we're all salespeople, whether we want to be or not. And you're also building a career. So they have to kind of think about how they want to position themselves. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have to think about the ways, and it can't be, I always talk about customization. If they want to, encourage this physician to talk with them and give them an opportunity to pitch as to why they want to hire them, they got to think about, how am I going to position myself to open up their eyes and see how I can bring value? And it always does come back to that value piece, doesn't it? So it's effort and more time and thought that's going to go into it. It's worth it, because every time you're doing that, you're building a stronger you. But I've seen the hurdles with the health coaches as they are trying to demonstrate, like, no, actually, I can really be of value to your practice. This is how. And if they can do anything about getting numbers together, I don't know how much, if they're looking at someplace that's insured, and what we can do for the insurance that covers it, and how the return. There's so many ways a health coach can show it actually is of your benefit to talk with me, because I really can bring value. Okay. And then you're going to have to show, especially if it's a small practice, there is going to be return on your investment, because these small practices are really trying to make it work, right? They're not in the big health system, or if they are, but it takes a lot of thought on the part of that health coach of how I'm going to position myself, how I'm going to prove the value. I'm going to have to do some research on that and how they do it. And yeah.
So do you, in your library of e-courses, do you have one like that teaches the practitioner how to pitch themselves?
Oh, not yet, but you just gave me a great idea. Thank you. I just started that. In fact, I did it it was on the goal for this year. And then when COVID hit, I'm like, okay, now's the time, because as we know, when you start something new, there is a learning curve, and it took a lot more time than I thought, just to, everything of the video and et cetera, et cetera. So the first 3 we did were just on how you're writing a cover letter, how you're writing the resume, how you're interviewing. And what I love to do is take what I learned from interviews and bring it to the course, or I write it in a blog, or so over a week. And I always see trends. Like, I'll do a week of interviewing and I'll see people who will miss something in an interview so big. And so then I write about it or whatever. So that's what I've tried to do with those courses. And the one thing that I've always done is I always identify where there's a need. How can I fill a need? And so when you just said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the next one. Or I'm actually talking with someone today who's been through the courses so that I can get feedback and like, what's next? Because I feel like this is such a different field. I thought, well, maybe I do one free course if they complete those 3, where I can talk even more specifically about, like what you were saying, how do you position yourself? And the other thing is, I don't want people to get discouraged, because I had, 5 years of just, wow, I'd have to build myself up so many times. And just, that is what happens when you're an entrepreneur. That is what happens when you're a grassroots kind of, that's what we are. We're kind of, this grassroots movement of changing the way people are thinking and the way healthcare, are you kidding, right? The big healthcare system and all of that. So you aren't going to go up against something like that and have an easy ride. And I think, there's so many kind of books out there that will talk about, I don't know, I don't want to discredit any of them, because there's good information in them, but it isn't easy. It is not going to be easy. And I think you need to start from that mindset of, it's not going to be easy, but I'm up for it. I'm going to grow. I'm going to learn. I'm not going to be Lisa McDonald and not get resources and support along the way, because boy, that was a big mistake for her. So I'm going to get that support. And I always think about, I mean, what wonderful things have ever happened in our lives that we didn't have to work for. And there is magic. I'm a huge believer in magic and things that happen and fall in your lap here and there. I'm, but for these things that we're doing now, a big movement like this and trying to change people's health and the way they think, that's not going to be easy. So you got to make sure when you get into that, you got to take care of like your mind and body and spirit, because it's going to be some work. And that's like one of the things I really want, because I see people who are writing into us and saying, how am I going to, and every one of them, I want to call them like, don't give up. Don't give up, because even if somebody does any program, there's so many different great education programs out there. And if you do that, you're not getting a job immediately. You need to remember that you are just brought value to your own knowledge and health. You tell me that information didn't just help you and your family. That's invaluable. And now you also are setting an example of how you're living a healthier lifestyle, and the people around you are more energetic and everything. And your friends and everybody around is like, well, what are they doing? And it's maybe you're not doing it today as a career. Maybe you're not working in it right now, but it did bring value to your life. And so again, nothing's ever wasted, right? So that is just like one of the courses I don't know how that's all going to come together. I even thought like maybe we do a Facebook meeting once a month and, lift it. I don't know what that is. But that's the other thing about like, when you say something and someone plants a seed, is that growing? Is that, I stay open and kind of see what the need is. And so thanks for giving me that tip.
But I think you touched on that kind of earlier when you mentioned that when you go to conferences, back when we could go to conferences, you come back and you're like, ooh, I'm energized because I was around my people. And it's this whole idea of masterminding, right? Which you could do in a Facebook group. And I think, any coach or any entrepreneur who's feeling like burdened by the weight of all the stuff you got to do, or like alone, hook up with your peers, just get that energy, right? That's a big factor, I think.
Oh, it's a huge factor.
I think for anyone in this health coaching world, you have to get comfortable talking about yourself, but within the framework of who you serve and the problem you solve. To your point, Lisa, we are all salespeople in some degree of our lives, always, whether it's getting your kids to eat broccoli or whether it's, whatever, it could be kind of on the personal side. It could be trying to convince a spouse of something, but whether you are trying to bring on a new client as an entrepreneur or in a business owner, or whether you're trying to pitch your services to an employer, right? Or so, like me. So here's what we see on the spectrum. We see those that have their own private practice. They're bringing on clients themselves, blah, blah, blah. And then we have others that might have that piece of their practice, but they're also pitching themselves as like more of a contractor, right? To other businesses, whether it's employers or other physicians, but they're not employees of those people. They're some sort of like contract, right? Yep. And then you have those that are looking for a job. But in all three of those instances, you have to learn to have comfort in your story, the value you bring, and to them. You got to make it personal to them. And I think in many cases that can be a missing link. We get a lot of questions from, hey, how do I pitch myself to my local gym? Or, hey, how do I pitch myself to the chiropractor down the street? So these are all, I think, valuable exercises, whether you ever get the gig or not, to actually work with these employers. Learning how to do that and feeling comfortable in doing that is a tremendous value to yourself. And this is going to work whether you decide to stay within your own private practice, whether you're looking to form a partnership, or whether you're looking to get an actual job. You have to have confidence in what it is you can bring to the table. And the more experience you get doing these interviews, and the more experience you get just coaching people, the more confident you're going to get. But all of this, like anything, gets better with practice and doing it more often, right? Now, you mentioned something like, and because of your role, because of what you do in recruitment, you do a lot of interviews. I heard you say something like somebody missed something really big in an interview, and you wrote about that. Do you have a couple of tips, I guess, or thoughts on someone who's going into an interview? Let's say we've got a health coach, or maybe you're trying to place somebody, right? You've got a practitioner that's looking to bring, some staff member, and perhaps it's a health coach, and going into an interview. What should health coaches be prepared for? What should they be prepared to answer? What should they try to highlight about what it is they do? Any thoughts on that?
The first thing that popped in my head when you were talking about that is authenticity. Because they want to see how you are going to show up for their patients or their member at the gym, whatever that is. And we all are craving authenticity. We want truth. We want what's real. And so I do interview a little bit different. Like some recruiters, they might be super tense. They want to see how they react under the stress or whatever. But I want to see who's really there. So I try to set them at ease in the beginning. I try to establish that connection because I want to, if it's there, then we can, the employer can mold and go, is that there? So I think being relaxed when you go into it. Okay, first I'm going to stop. Research. I once had someone, it was just a phone interview, but they hadn't even, I always send information about the employer prior. And I don't tell them, I said, okay, here's some information and then we'll talk more on the call. If they haven't researched what I sent them, then they're really not invested in this, right? I want someone who looked at that website. So let's say it's a practice website. I want to know that they researched it. They identify the way they practice integrative and functional medicine. They know if they're cash, are they insurance, are they hybrid? They know who they have on staff. They'll know. And a big shout out, whenever I'm interviewing a physician, if they see health coaches on staff, they are thrilled. I'm so glad I remember to say that physicians love health coaches. So they love to see them on the staff. That is a selling point that I will bring up when I am pitching an employer to a really good candidate. So first of all, you better do your research, whether you're interviewing for a job or you're going to pitch yourself to a gym or a client of any nature. Wow. Show that why you are going to be the right fit. Because it's all again about value. I even write about that or I teach that too, about you've got to be prepared to tell them why you're going to add value to their practice. Look at their team. Well, how do you complement that team? What is that? What piece? Are they missing something that you can bring? Do you have a specialty? If they're going to an employer and they're doing, if somebody's leaving the business world and they've been in corporate America forever and now they're becoming a health coach, if I were back in my company that I worked at, I would love to hire a health coach who had that experience of living and breathing the corporate world. So they're going to leverage anything from their past experience that they can bring into that interview that's going to show, here's my value, here's my fit. They've got to be personable. They've got to demonstrate how you are going to engage with their customer, client, patient, whomever that is. Everything you are doing is being watched, and I know that can make people nervous, but if you've done your homework and researched, you know your stuff as a health coach, you know the value you bring. When you prepare before any meeting, everybody knows this, you're more confident. You've got to put the time and energy and the research into it, and then you show up and you are going to be your authentic self. You need to be relaxed and smiling and engaging in with them. And, this is coming from somebody who is type A, had tons of anxiety. Anxiety is I can't even, yeah. So I would over prepare and then I'd be like, oh, but what if I don't? And then all of a sudden I have finally just kind of settled into, I don't know, everything is always going to be okay. And if it doesn't go great, I'm going to have a lesson learned to be better later. And I'm always prepared. I am always prepared. And that's like even showing up today. Of course I looked, I did beforehand because I don't want to ever, that's when you're not your best. You get nervous and you're not prepared and you aren't going to give them any value. So that is, the one thing I see, I think the most people, when they fail immediately, is if I see they didn't do their research and they didn't prepare. And then again, we're dealing with health and we're dealing with complex issues in medicine, et cetera, like that. So I'm usually going to ask something about, give me an example of. So if you're looking for a job with an employer, they're going to ask behavioral interview questions because past behavior is the best predictor of future performance, right? So I will dig into that. Like, tell me about an experience where you did solve a complex medical issue, or what is one of your big successes? And that should easily flow from you, and I've had people who have had years of experience and they really struggled with that. So then my first thing is, am I not putting them at ease? Because I do want them to be their best self. Now I'm a soft recruiter, maybe when it comes to that. But I do really want to see the best self. But if I give them an opportunity and I come back around and they don't, then that's a concern for me. And that's not somebody I can present to my client with confidence.
Great. Good. That's a good list. That's a really good list. And I love that it started with authenticity because, that goes for I don't want to work anywhere where I can't be my authentic self. I don't want to take on a client that's not a good fit for me. I don't want to work in an office that's out of alignment with like my values and, strengths. So showing up with an authenticity is just a great starting point for anybody. And then, do your research for sure. Definitely don't go into an interview not knowing who you're meeting with and what they're all about. And then the final thing was be prepared to share some wins. That's one thing I always forget to do. Back when I was doing job interviews, I'm like, I knew they were going to ask me one of those questions. I forgot to think of one. Like, honestly, like, like, so hard. I'm so glad I'm out of that rat race. Those are great tips, though. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all the more reason to just get out, even if you are going down the health coaching road and the ultimate goal is to work for somebody else and get a job. You have to get out and you just have to start coaching people to begin with, because employers are going to want to find people with some experience.
Yeah.
So just even if it wasn't paid, right? Even if you just got out and your first few clients were friends or family members, and that's fine. It's still a story, right? It's still hopefully either a success or, gosh, a lesson learned, right? That you can take in with you that continues to provide value to the person you're hoping to work for and share your experience.
On that, I was just thinking, because like if a health coach sat in an interview and the interviewer said, tell me a time when you solved a complex medical issue. Well, we can't really answer that because that's out of scope for us, for health coaches. I know other practitioners can answer that. But if you got asked a question like that and you're like, man, I'm a newbie health coach. And you're like, well, I helped my aunt with her IBS. It got way better after a few weeks. Like, I would spin that. I'd say I had a client that presented with irritable bowel syndrome, and she couldn't be more than 10 feet away from a toilet at any point, in her day. And now she's here. And, I think even a newbie health coach has there's somebody that they've touched and influenced, and just, leverage that.
Absolutely. And I am all about, when you're starting out, you do have to do some free. When I started with recruitment and smaller practices couldn't afford a recruiter, I'm like, well, how can I continue? And I started the job board. I gave 4 companies a free posting. I said, hey, I've got this network. I'm going to build this. I just did a little page on my site. I'll give you a free posting. I did it with 4, and that was it. It went great. And that was so, and I do something free at first because I'm huge about the value piece. This is how I've balanced my issue about giving away too much is if I know I'm giving you value, I can charge, I can do. So I start with free. I start with, before I put those e-courses out there, there are clinicians I work with in the field who I respect tremendously, and I had them watch them. And I knew I could not put those out there and ask someone to pay for my course until I had people who I respected, who are, they're professionals, they've hired, they've had management, they're in this, and I had to have their validation. And then I'm like, okay, now I can charge, right? Now I know, because you remember what that saying from Maya Angelou, people, they won't remember what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what you were saying, Erin, about how that craniosacral therapist, how did she make you feel after? And you're like, oh, right. So it is, maybe you might have to give away a little bit in the beginning and make some people feel good, but it's going to be worth it because you're even more confident now about when you go out and charge. Because you're like, yeah, look what I did for them. I am ready. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We talk about that all the time, about the value of providing value and doing it because you can, and that people at the end of the day will hire people they know, like, and trust. And how do they get to know you is because you're out there sharing. Right. Mm-hmm. And, some of the clients that have come to me, they just approached me. It wasn't any marketing I did, was because they heard me speak someplace, or something I posted on social media resonated with them, or this happens all the time. I mean, I know it's kind of geeky, but a lot of times I'll post my workouts out on social media, but I've had people message me, hey, I did your workout. It was awesome. Can I have a question? Just because I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Give it a try. Let me know how you feel. Right. Mm-hmm. And so you're just putting yourself out there, and you're sharing because you can, and it doesn't take anything away from you to do that. Right. And where clients are going to follow you, or where possible employers are going to value you, is in what you've been able to share, the experience you bring to the table. So I 100% agree with you. And I know Erin would too, that sharing freely. And I also love that you said authenticity, because that's the other side of the equation. Sometimes I'll get, because I do own a gym, I'll get people that will send me their pitch letter that they want to send to some gym. And I'm like, cut this out. No one gives a shit about you. They don't care. They don't care about all your certificates. They don't care about the primal way of life. They want to know how you can help them. And you got to keep it brief. If I'm a gym owner, which I am, and somebody sends me a letter that's a full page or 2 pages long, I'm not reading it. Sorry. You've got to be able to succinctly say, this is what I can do for you. Can you just give me 5 minutes? you
Oh
know?
gosh, I love that. I'd love to have you come on one of my courses and talk about that, because I say with you, I am a huge advocate of cover letters and objectives, because you want to capture their attention right away in a few sentences of why they want to give you a closer look. And again, like, what are they going to do for you? What are they going to bring to you? And when you were talking about authenticity, one of the things people hire for is, okay, they're going to make sure you can do the job, but they aren't going to hire you unless you have a personality that fits on their team. So, they're going to find plenty of people who can do that job, but that personality is what's going to get you the job. And if you are your authentic self, then you can present that. Because I think, Erin, you mentioned this too, like, you don't want to work with someone who's not aligned with your values or goals. And so be yourself, because you're screening them too. You're screening that employer, you're screening that client. They might not be the fit for you. So if you don't show up as yourself, your true self, you're never going to determine for sure if it's a good fit.
It's a real drag to work with someone who you're not aligned with anyway. This is great. Let's go get some jobs. Let's go and get some jobs. I'm excited. Well, just by way of sort of summarizing, wrapping up, this is so great. I really appreciate you, Lisa, coming in and telling, first of all, I appreciate that you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
And I get so excited when these kinds of collabs and utilities come online that are attempting to bring us all together, and with the ultimate goal of just getting people healthy. I mean, gosh, that's why we're all here. So tell our listeners where they can learn more about what you do and where they can find you to reach out if they have questions or thoughts about what you're offering.
Absolutely. So our website is integratedconnects.com. And basically you can find everything that you need there. We do have the job board there. We do have a place you can submit your resume if you want us to keep our eyes open for jobs we're recruiting for, and we keep it confidential in our database. We also have blogs and articles, and that when I spoke about that, when I see there's a need, I'll write or I'll talk about it and send that out. And then we're just starting our Integrated Connections Academy with e-courses. And we have the 3 right now for candidates, and I just launched one for the employers of what to do before you even start hiring. And then the next one's going to come about specifically for how employers can have a really great effective interview process. So that is, and then we've got the social media links there and everything, but just integratedconnects.com, and hopefully there's information there that will help everybody.
Are you are you placing health coaches? So are health coaches welcome to upload resumes? Is that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then also if you sign up on our website, we only do 2 emails a month because everybody's bombarded with emails, right? So, and the first one is a jobs announcement. And so they can just look at their phone and go through and see if there's any jobs that they're interested in. It's also a way to see kind of what's emerging, or maybe you see a new practice opening in your neighborhood and hey, wait, I didn't know they were there. I might want to, it's just a great way to see connections. And then we have the newsletter, and that's where I offer usually there's an employer resource and a candidate resource in there, and then just an overview of what I'm seeing happening in the field.
Nice.
Awesome. What a great resource. I think anybody that's, whether you're looking for a job or whether you just want to keep your finger on the pulse, I think they should stay on top of it. They should be following you. So thank you so much for your time, and I can feel your passion. I know the people that are listening can hear it in your voice. And so thanks for being on Team Healthy.
Oh, no, thank you. This is really fun.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks so much, Lisa.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.